At 4:18 a.m., the rain on Bay Parkway sounded like a hand drumming steadily on tin, and Ava Hassan stood alone in the back kitchen of Rosaria Bakery, with both palms braced on the stainless table, waiting for the dizziness to settle. The industrial mixer had gone quiet 10 minutes earlier, but the room still hummed with trapped heat, burnt sugar, and the yeasty damp of bread that had cooled hours ago. Flour clung to the cuts across her knuckles in pale, stubborn lines, and when she flexed her fingers, the skin pulled tight with a sting that felt cleaner than the ache in her spine. 14 hours on her feet had narrowed her world to simple calculations. Rent, utilities, insulin, dough order, rent again. The wall clock above the proofing cabinet jumped forward with a tired click. She stared at it, then at the legal pad on the counter where she kept numbers in 2 columns. Due and past due. The pen had bled through where her hand had lingered too long, smearing a small blue cloud over the figure for gas service. She tore the page off, folded it once, then unfolded it, and smoothed it flat again, as if a neater page might become a kinder month. Her phone buzzed against a bag of pastry flour. She didn't have to look to know the pattern. 3 short vibrations, pause, then one more. Landlord. Again. She swiped the screen awake anyway. 3 missed calls from Mr. Nicasio between 3:46 and 4:11, each one accompanied by the same polite text that carried a threat in every courteous word. Please confirm rent transfer by 10 a.m. to avoid action per lease terms. Ava inhaled through her nose, held it, exhaled slowly. She typed, deleted the sentence, typed again. I'm sending what I can by noon. She stared at it for 2 full breaths before hitting send. The message went, and an immediate read receipt appeared as if he had been watching the thread like a hawk watches a field. By then, her coffee had gone cold in a chipped Rosaria mug near the sink, a thin skin gathering across the top. She drank it anyway and felt nothing from it but bitterness and heat. She reached into her apron pocket and pulled out the folded pharmacy receipt she had checked 6 times since midnight. Sami Hassan, insulin glargine pens, refill due today, paid amount, pending. The pharmacist had circled noon in red ink and written, almost apologetically, we can hold until 12 p.m. noon, 7 hours and 42 minutes away. She slid the receipt back into her pocket as if it could warm there, then turned toward the deck oven, toward the failure she still hadn't solved. The right chamber control panel blinked an error code in dim red. She had reset it twice. She had unplugged and restarted the line. She had cursed at it in 3 languages and then apologized to it under her breath like an old woman in her building would have done. The fan motor still whined and died. Without that chamber, she could keep morning bread service alive. Barely. But a single large custom order would bury her. When she crouched to inspect the lower vents, cold water from her soaked jeans wicketed into her knees and made her shiver. The back door's weather stripping had failed in winter and never been replaced. Rain always found a way in, pooling near the flour sacks until someone remembered to throw towels down. Tonight the towels were already dark and heavy, smelling faintly of bleach and damp cardboard. Keys, phone, delivery clipboard. She set them in a line by the register, then unlocked the front to flip the sign from closed to prep, in case early commuters came for coffee and rolls before sunrise. The front of Rosaria was small and tired, and still beautiful to her in stubborn ways. Red tile floor cracked near the pastry case, brass handles rubbed bright by years of hands. A faded photo of her father in chef whites hanging behind the espresso machine. In the picture, he was laughing at someone outside the frame, one hand dusted with flour, his shoulders broad and easy. She touched the lower corner of the frame with 2 fingers and then stepped away before memory could sink its hooks too deep. The phone rang again, this time not from Mr. Nicasio's thread, but from Sammy. She answered on the first ring. "Hey," his voice came rough with sleep. "Did I wake you?" A laugh escaped her, dry and short. "I'm still at the bakery." Silence on his end for a beat, then, "How bad?" She looked at the dead oven chamber, looked at the cash drawer, looked at the rain tracking silver across the window. "Manageable," she said, and hated herself for how practiced the lie sounded. "Ava, don't start. You have class at 9. I can skip first period and come help." "You're not skipping anything." She softened her tone because she heard him breathing faster. "I mean it. We're fine. I'll be home by 6:30, and I'll handle the pharmacy before noon." "You don't have to keep saying before noon like a countdown." "It is a countdown." He was quiet again, and when he spoke, his voice had that careful steadiness he used when trying to sound older than he felt. "I can stretch what I have until tomorrow if I lower." "No." The word came out sharper than she intended. She pressed her fingers to her eyes. "No adjustments without your doctor. We agreed." "We agreed when Dad was still handling half this stuff." The bakery seemed to contract around her at that. Oven heat and rain chill and neon light all crowding into the same narrow space in her chest. "I know," she said. "I know. I've got it." He breathed out slowly, surrender and trust tangled together in one sound. "Okay, I'm sorry. I just hate hearing you this tired. I hate sounding this tired." She looked at the clock. 4:27. "Go back to sleep for an hour. Eat before school. Text me when you leave." Bossy. Alive and bossy. That earned a small laugh from him, and the knot at the base of her throat loosened by a fraction. "Love you," he said. "Love you more." When the call ended, she stood still for a moment with the phone in her hand and the rain filling the quiet between refrigerator cycles. Then the day resumed its demands. She logged inventory. She wrapped what was left of the pistachio biscotti in wax paper for the morning shelf. She marked out 3 names on the standing wholesale sheet because 2 cafes had gone under and one had switched to a cheaper supplier in Queens. Every crossed-out line looked like an erased future. At 4:41, Rosa Marino came in through the side entrance, shaking an umbrella that had lost 2 spokes. Rosa was 62, compact as a sparrow, and wore her apron over a church cardigan she never managed to keep free of butter stains. She took one look at Ava and clicked her tongue. "You're still here," Rosa said. "Tell me you sat down at least once." "I sat down when the frosting compressor jammed." "That is not sitting. That is surrendering to machinery." Rosa hung the umbrella by the mop sink and moved toward the prep table. "Show me your hands." Ava lifted them reluctantly. Rosa squinted at the flour packed into the cuts. "You clean these?" "With sanitizer." Rosa gave her a look that could strip paint. "Sanitizer is for counters, soap for skin, hot water now, then bandage." Ava obeyed, because arguing with Rosa before dawn required an energy reserve she did not possess. As she rinsed her hands, Rosa opened the register and counted the till with brisk, unforgiving precision. 312, she said. "Cash deposit from yesterday still not done?" "Didn't get to the bank before close." "Then you do not walk around with that in your coat. You hear me?" "I hear you." Rosa snapped the drawer shut and lowered her voice. "Nicasio's nephew came by at midnight, asked when rent clears, too curious for a man buying one cannoli." Ava dried her hands slowly, skin now clean and burning. "What did you tell him?" "That you pay when you say you pay." Rosa's mouth tightened. "And that he should learn how to stand in line." Some tension eased from Ava's shoulders despite herself. "Thank you." I'm not doing this for him. I am doing this because your father let me run this kitchen like a queen for 20 years, and you still let me do it now. Rosa set a box of clean gauze by Ava's elbow. Bandage. Then eat half a brioche before you touch another tray. Ava started to protest, then stopped. The hollow feeling in her stomach had become a kind of white noise she ignored until someone named it. She wrapped her left hand, then right, slower than usual, and tore a brioche in half. Butter coated her tongue. Her body recognized food and asked for more. But she kept to half. By 5:15, the first drip of dawn showed through the rain as a gray thinning at the edge of the block. Commuter traffic hissed on wet asphalt. The espresso machine in front coughed awake. Ava pulled up online banking on her phone while waiting for the first shot to run and watched the numbers load with agonizing slowness. Available balance, $42.17. She did the subtraction against noon in her head anyway, because repetition felt like action. Insulin, $186 after discount card. Rent partial to delay legal notice, at least $600. Dough shipment invoice due Friday, $340. She closed the app before her pulse could climb any higher. At 5:32, a new email notification slid across her screen. Subject line in crisp black text. Urgent request. Same-day dessert service. Pellegrini Foundation Gala. She almost dismissed it as spam. Then she saw the attached purchase order estimate and sat down hard on the stool behind the register. Brioche forgotten in her hand. The number had too many zeros for a Tuesday in March. Pickup and plating required by evening at a Manhattan venue she had only seen in magazines. With strict protocol, liability clauses, and a rush premium that could carry rent, insulin, repairs, and 2 weeks of breathing room if she could execute it flawlessly. Her heart thudded once, then again, this time with something dangerously close to hope. She opened the attachment, scanned the menu specifications, and felt both thrill and dread sweep through her at once. Chocolate mirror domes, citrus tartlets, almond honey millefeuille in quantities that assumed equipment she no longer had. Rosa leaned over her shoulder, reading in silence. When Ava reached the failed oven line item and hesitated, Rosa placed a small, flour-dry hand on her wrist. "We can borrow deck space at Bellini on 18th until noon," Rosa said. "I still know their night baker." "That's 3 taxi runs and extra labor. It's work, paid work." Rosa's gaze sharpened. "You decide now, Ava. Fear is expensive." Outside, thunder rolled far off over the East River, low and steady like furniture being dragged across a ceiling. Ava looked at the rain, at the cracked red tile, at her father's photo, at the clock now reading 5:36, and then back at the glowing purchase order waiting for a response deadline in 23 minutes. She clicked Accept. The confirmation email arrived in less than 10 seconds, stamped with a legal footer longer than some leases and a blunt line in the body that tightened Ava's shoulders. Vendor arrival required by 4 p.m. sharp. Late entry forfeits payment in full. She read it twice, then a third time, while rain ticked harder against the front glass and Rosa reached past her for the order printer. 3 pages fed out in a hiss of warm paper and black ink. Quantities. Plating diagrams, allergy protocols, security access instructions that demanded government identification for every person stepping into the service elevator. Ava set the pages flat and forced herself into sequence. Ingredients first, labor second, transport third, panic never. She called Bellini Bakery on the 18th, while Rosa began rewriting batch math in thick pencil across the prep board. Their night baker, Marco, answered sounding half asleep and fully suspicious, until Rosa took the phone and barked his full name with the authority of a woman who had fed half the neighborhood for decades. By the time she hung up, Ava had 2 borrowed oven windows between 7 and 11:30, 1 cart slot in their walk-in, and a reminder from Rosa that gratitude could come later. By 6:10 a.m., the block outside Rosaria had shifted from gray to hard silver, and the rain had turned from steady to needling, the kind that got into cuffs and seams and stayed there. Ava stood at the steel table piping ganache into shell molds with wrapped knuckles that throbbed each time she squeezed, counting under her breath to keep a steady fill. 56, 57, 58. Her body had moved past fatigue into precision, that thin survival lane where thought became action and action became the only way through the hour. Rosa coordinated the kitchen like a field commander, assigning proof times, calling a retired dishwasher for temporary help, and shoving half a turkey sandwich into Ava's hand at 8:22 without breaking eye contact until Ava ate it. At 9:03, Sami texted from school with a photo of his cafeteria tray and a single line, "Took insulin." "Don't fight me today." Ava stared at it long enough for her vision to blur, then pocketed the phone and went back to glazing domes until her wrists shook. The first taxi run to Bellini cost more than she wanted to spend, and less than failure would cost if she missed the gala window. She loaded insulated carriers beside a crate of tartlet shells, climbed in with her knees pressed against cardboard, and watched Bensonhurst slide by in wet familiar blocks. Discount pharmacies, closed shutters, a laundromat venting heat into rain. Then the bridges, the river, glass and stone rising as if another city had been built on top of the first and charged admission. The Manhattan venue occupied half a block of polished restraint, all brushed brass, black umbrellas at the entrance, and doormen whose gloves looked newer than her winter coat. Service vendors were routed to the side loading bay, through a lane marked with retractable stanchions. A security guard scanned her ID, then the temporary badge, then the work order, his expression neutral in that rehearsed way that still managed to feel dismissive. Behind him, 2 floral contractors rolled in carts of white peonies under plastic rain covers, while a pastry assistant from a French hotel kitchen leaned toward another and murmured something that ended with a glance at Ava's patched sleeve. "Rosaria Bakery?" the guard said. "Yes." He looked down at the paperwork again. "You're replacing Duclair Patisserie on same-day notice." We accepted the rush contract. Stay in designated service zones. No unauthorized movement between donor floors, no photography. Ava nodded once. Understood. Inside the service corridor, the class contrast hit with physical force. Marble in soft gray veins. Crystal fixtures diffusing warm light across walls that had never seen chipped paint. Sound-dampening carpet that swallowed cartwheels. Staff in matching black moved with synchronized efficiency, while Ava's coat dripped onto polished tile and left temporary dark spots she wiped with a napkin from her pocket. A maitre d' intercepted her near the freight elevator, his suit so sharply tailored it looked structural. "You're with the emergency dessert replacement," he said, not quite a question. "Yes." "Ava Hassan, Rosaria." His gaze dropped to her badge, then to the plastic-wrapped carriers, then to her hands. "You'll stage in prep room C, not the main pastry line. Keep your team compact. We cannot have congestion during donor ingress." She glanced at Rosa, unloading behind her. "It's just the 2 of us and 1 courier." His smile appeared and vanished without warmth. How rustic. Rosa made a soft sound in her throat that Ava recognized as a warning shot. But Ava touched her elbow and kept her own expression neutral. The maitre d' continued, tone polished to a knife edge. "Plating begins at 6:40. Final presentation table is in the East Gallery. You will not address guests directly unless asked. If a board member speaks to you, route all service concerns through me." Ava met his eyes. I'm here to deliver what your foundation ordered. He held the stare a beat too long, then stepped aside. Try not to improvise. They reached Prep Room C, a stainless and stone space larger than all of Rosaria's back kitchen. 2 junior staff members from another vendor occupied one side with sugar flowers under humidity domes. One looked at Ava's transport crates and whispered, "Neighborhood bakery? For this room?" Low enough to deny and high enough to wound. Ava kept moving, inventorying tray counts, checking shell integrity, confirming temper, because stopping would have meant feeling each slight as a separate cut. At 11:47 a.m., her phone buzzed with the pharmacy alert she had feared and planned for. Refill held until 12 p.m. She stepped into the corridor, transferred payment from the rush deposit authorization that had just posted pending, and called the pharmacist to confirm release for Sammy. Her knees almost gave when she heard, "Paid and ready for pickup." She thanked him twice, returned to prep, and did not allow herself relief longer than one breath. The pressure changed after lunch as foundation staff began circulating with clipboards and donor lists, their formality tightening the room. A woman in pearls stopped at Ava's station and lifted a finished mirror dome with 2 fingers as if testing counterfeit currency. "These are from where?" "Rosaria Bakery, Bensonhurst," Ava said. The woman's brows rose. How adventurous. Ava took the dome back gently and set it in line with the others. "They're stable for transport and service. Citrus set is in the next carrier." The woman gave a small, approving nod that felt more like ownership than praise and walked away. Rosa muttered in Italian under her breath, then louder, "Temperature check in 10. Restoring the world to practical things." It was a little after 3 when he entered Prep Room C without introducing himself, and the space reacted before Ava could place why. Conversations clipped shorter. A security earpiece hand rose to a collar mic. The maitre d', who had managed disdain all morning, straightened and said, "Mr. Pellegrini," with visible caution. Enzo Pellegrini wore a dark suit cut close through the shoulders. No tie pin, no wasted movement. He took in the room once, eyes moving from the staging racks to the service path, then to Ava's station with a concentration that felt like weight, not spectacle. His gaze did not linger on her coat or her bandaged hands with pity or curiosity. He looked as if he were verifying a critical component in a structure he expected to hold. "Ms. Hassan," he said, voice low and clipped. "Thank you for taking this contract on short notice." The room went very still. Ava wiped her palms on her apron and answered in the same formal register. "Your team sent clear specs. We'll deliver on time." His attention shifted to the maitre d'. "She will have direct service access if timing requires it." "Of course, sir," the man said, immediate and pale. Enzo returned his focus to Ava. "If anyone blocks your line, report it to Security Chief Bianchi. You should have his contact." "I do." "Good." A single nod, and then he moved on, already speaking to an events director about donor seating and stage timing. The atmosphere behind him reordered itself with startling speed. The same staff who had watched Ava like a problem began offering tray space and clearing pathways. The junior pastry assistant who had whispered earlier asked if she needed extra acetate strips. Ava accepted without comment, because pride did not pay invoices and efficiency did. By early evening, rain began again, harder than the morning, drumming against the high windows and turning the loading bay lights into blurred halos. At 6:18 p.m., Ava rolled the first plated cart toward the East Gallery, Rosa beside her checking garnish alignment with relentless eyes. The gallery itself looked like a museum designed for money, High ceilings, vintage portraits, polished stone reflecting chandelier light, donors in dark suits and jewel tones speaking quietly over string music. For a moment, Ava felt the distance between worlds with almost physical clarity. Overdue notices in her pocket, marble under her shoes, insulin receipt folded soft from being handled too often. She kept moving. Plate placement, final wipe, step back. The gala proceeded on schedule. Speeches, applause, silent auction paddles lifting in smooth, expensive gestures. Ava stayed mostly within service lanes as instructed, rotating fresh trays and tracking consumption by section. At 7:02, while waiting for a service elevator to return, she noticed a valet at the far entrance struggling with a sedan umbrella, his hand shaking hard enough that water splashed over the polished threshold. A supervisor barked at him, and the valet flinched like he had been struck, then glanced toward the side corridor that led to restricted loading access. Ava followed that glance. Nothing obvious. Just a door swinging shut at the end of the corridor and two security men speaking in low tones. Still, a cold thread worked down her back. At 7:11, she pushed a cart toward the service bar and paused when the corridor that had been busy all evening suddenly went silent. No dish clatter, no call-outs, no rolling bins. The silence lasted only a few seconds, then noise resumed in a rush, louder than before. But her pulse had already kicked up. She told herself it could be a timing lull, a door closed, a normal operational shift. Her body did not believe it. 3 minutes later, she stepped into the loading passage to retrieve a backup garnish tray and heard footsteps behind her, measured and close. She stopped. The steps stopped. She moved again. So did they. When she turned, no one stood in the narrow stretch of corridor, only stacked linen carts and a flickering strip of fluorescent light reflecting in puddles tracked in from the storm. She took out her phone and opened Bianchi's contact without sending yet. Her thumb hovered over call. "Still working too hard, Ava." The voice came from the shadow near the utility door, smooth with practiced charm she knew too well. Nader Khoury stepped into the fractured light, wearing an evening suit and a smile fit for donor tables, rain beating on his lapel. His jaw twitched once before settling, that old tell she had learned to fear long before she had learned to name it. Her throat tightened. "You're not on this vendor list. I'm on whatever list I need." He glanced at the tray in her hands, then at the badge clipped to her coat. "Look at you. Marble floors now, crystal chandeliers. You always did have ambitions." Ava kept her phone screen angled inward, thumb still poised over Bianchi's number. "This is a work corridor. Move." Nader's smile deepened without softening. "You owe me money. Work corridor, ballroom, church steps, it's all the same until you pay." From the main hall, applause swelled and died. Rain hammered the loading bay doors. Somewhere behind her, a service cart rattled and then went quiet again. Ava took one step back, spine aligning, senses sharpening to points. At the far end of the corridor, a tall figure in a dark suit turned into view, and Enzo Pellegrini's voice carried low and controlled through the narrow space. "Stay behind me." Enzo's tone carried no volume, yet it flattened the corridor into lines of threat and distance. And Ava moved on reflex, backing one step until the cold edge of a linen cart pressed into her hip. Nader's smile held for half a breath, then tightened at the corners as he looked from Enzo to Ava and back again, recalculating. "I was just congratulating an old friend," Nader said. Palms open, posture easy enough for cameras that were not there. "No need for theater, Mr. Pellegrini." Enzo did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Ava, assessing for injury first, not explanation. "Did he touch you?" Not yet, she said, and hated that her voice sounded thinner than she wanted. Nader gave a soft laugh. Not yet. Listen to that. You'd think I was a criminal. The fluorescent strip above them flickered once, light fracturing over wet concrete. Ava felt her pulse in her wrapped wrist, a hot throb under gauze. Enzo shifted half a step, broadening the block between her and Nader without crowding her, his body language controlled and final. You are not cleared for this corridor, Enzo said. You're leaving now. And if I don't? Nader's eyes cut to Ava. She works for me. Debt contract. Signed. Ava's throat closed so fast she had to swallow twice before sound came. Forged. Nader's expression didn't change, but his jaw twitched again, tiny and dangerous. Careful, he murmured, still smiling. You embarrass me, you pay more. Footsteps approached from the gallery side, then passed without turning in. Staff moving quickly under gala pressure. The moment held inside itself, private and electric, while applause rose faintly through the walls from the donor floor. Enzo tilted his head toward the main hall as if making a practical suggestion instead of drawing a line. Take your dispute to council, he said, not to my service passage. Nader straightened his cuffs with deliberate calm. My dispute is with her, in public if necessary. She responds better when people are watching. Ava felt the skin along her arms prickle. She had heard that sentence in different rooms, over different years, always delivered as if cruelty were strategy. Her thumb was still hovering over Bianchi's contact. She didn't press call. Not yet. Instead, she met Nader's gaze and gave him nothing. You don't get to script this, she said. His smile sharpened. You think you're protected because he stood near you once? He nodded toward Enzo without taking his eyes off her. Men like him don't save women like you. They lease them. Enzo turned to Nader then, finally, and the temperature of the corridor seemed to drop. You have 10 seconds, he said. Nader held up both hands in mock surrender and took 2 steps backward toward the gallery doors. Of course, I'd never disrupt such a noble evening. His gaze slid to Ava one last time, bright and mean. Come find me before dessert. We'll discuss your payment schedule. He disappeared into the gallery traffic before security rounded the corner. 2 men in tailored black arrived a second later, earpieces lit, scanning empty corridor and damp footprints. Enzo gave them one clipped instruction. Find him. They moved instantly. Enzo looked back to Ava. Are you all right? No. The word pressed against her teeth, but she nodded anyway because the carts were still moving, and her trays were still timed, and panic would cost her money she could not lose. I need to finish service. A muscle in his jaw flexed. Bianchi will stay within sight. She should have said thank you. Instead, she said, if he corners me again, I won't freeze. Enzo watched her for one unreadable second, then gave a single nod that felt less like permission than recognition. Good. He stepped aside, and the corridor resumed motion around them, sound rushing back in waves, dish bins clattering, clipped instructions, doors opening and closing. Ava forced her legs to move, carried the garnish tray to the service bar, and set rosemary threads into citrus tartlets with hands that wanted to shake. By 7:26, the dessert reveal schedule had compressed by 4 minutes because a board speech ran long. By 7:29, the maitre d' had recovered his authority and was directing traffic with 2 fingers and a strained smile. Final centerpiece to East Gallery now, he told her. Foundation chair wants the photographs before coffee service. The centerpiece was her tallest sugar piece, an amber spiral anchored to a reinforced base, disguised with candied citrus peel and spun isomalt threads. She had built it at dawn, exhausted and suspicious after seeing the trembling valet in the dead corridor silence. And on instinct, she had taped a bakery tracker under the base plate before sealing it. She used those tags for stolen delivery crates and missing scooters. Not men like Nader, but fear had its own engineering. Rosa caught her eye as they lifted the platter together. "You breathe?" Rosa said quietly. "Then you walk." Ava breathed, walked. The East Gallery had shifted into that brittle part of formal evenings when alcohol softened voices but sharpened ego. Crystal chandeliers fractured light across tuxedo lapels and silk shoulders. A quartet near the far wall played something restrained and expensive. Donors turned toward the dessert table as Ava and Rosa positioned the centerpiece under focused lamps, its sugar arcs glowing like amber fire. Camera flashes began before the platter was fully settled. A foundation MC in a midnight suit stepped to the small stage with a wireless microphone, thanking sponsors by name. Ava moved to retreat into service lanes when a hand closed around her wrist from behind, hard enough to grind gauze into bruised skin. She inhaled sharply and turned. Nader stood at her shoulder, smile polished for the room, fingers locked around her arm like a clamp. "Don't pull away," he said without moving his lips. "You'll make a scene." She tried to twist free. His grip tightened. Pain jumped up her forearm, bright and immediate. On stage, the MC faltered as Nader reached with his free hand, plucked the microphone from him in one smooth motion, and stepped into the center of the lights as if the program had always belonged to him. Conversations thinned, then stopped. He kept hold of Ava, drawing her half a step forward so she remained visible beside him. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice warm and amplified, "a quick acknowledgement for tonight's emergency pastry talent." A few donors laughed politely, expecting gratitude. Ava felt heat flood her face, then drain away. Nader angled the microphone toward her mouth for a second, then back to his own. "This is Ava Hassan, from a very authentic neighborhood operation. We all admire resilience, don't we? Missed rent, broken equipment, still making delicate sugar art for people who actually pay their bills." A ripple moved through the room, discomfort passing from face to face without landing anywhere brave. The maitre d' froze near the stage stairs, horrified and still. Rosa took one step forward from the dessert station, but a security guard held out an arm to stop her until command came. Nader continued, smiling wider. "She's also under contract to me, strictly financial, before anyone starts writing poetry about empowerment." Ava's pulse slammed so hard she could hear it over the speakers. Humiliation hit first, then rage, then the old fear like a familiar hand at her throat. She scanned the room and saw Enzo at the far side near the donor dais, already moving, his expression gone flat with controlled fury. Nader lifted Ava's wrist higher, displaying the hold as if it were playful. "Tell them, Habibti. Tell them you're leaving with me tonight to settle your obligations." The room watched. Rich men with folded hands, women in diamonds staring over champagne rims, phones rising, subtle at first, then less subtle as scandal scented the air. Ava stopped hearing the quartet, stopped hearing the rain. For one suspended heartbeat, she was back in a different hall years earlier, smiling on command while he whispered penalties into her ear. Her knees threatened to give. Her hand went cold. The urge to disappear came hard and immediate. Then she saw the sugar base at her feet, precisely where she had placed it, and remembered the tracker taped underneath. She remembered the scheduled folder on her phone labeled Flower Orders, loaded with 3 weeks of recordings she had captured in stairwells, outside pharmacies, in parked cars while he spoke too confidently about forged signatures and paid clerks. She had set it to send at 7:35 if she hit one button. Insurance for a day she prayed would not come. It was 7:34. She let her shoulders sag as if she were yielding. Nader's grip loosened by a fraction, satisfied by perceived compliance. Ava shifted her weight, ostensibly to steady herself in wet shoes, and drove her heel down against the edge of the sugar base. The reinforced plate cracked with a sharp report, then toppled. Amber spirals shattered across polished stone in a spray of brittle sweetness. Several guests gasped. Someone shouted. The tracker inside the base activated on impact and pulsed live location to every number she had preloaded. Rosa, Sammy, and Bianchi. In the same movement, Ava yanked her phone from her apron pocket, thumbed the scheduled upload, and hit send. File transfer initiated. 1 of 18. Nader jerked her wrist, furious now. What did you do? She looked straight at him, voice shaking but audible. Documented you. The first upload bar jumped to complete. The screen flashed, delivered. Bianchi security. Delivered. Legal intake. Across the gallery, Enzo's head turned sharply toward his own vibrating phone as he advanced. He glanced down once, saw whatever subject line Bianchi forwarded, and his expression changed from anger to lethal clarity. Nader saw it too late. He shoved the microphone back toward the stunned MC and dragged Ava off the stage edge toward the side aisle. Her shoulder clipped a floral stand. White peonies cascaded across the carpet. She stumbled, caught herself, and tried to wrench free. He leaned close, breath hot with whiskey and mint. You think recordings matter? He hissed. I can bury every... A hand like iron clamped onto his forearm and broke his grip. Enzo stepped between them with a speed that seemed impossible only because he had moved so little all evening. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Let go, he said. Nutter swung at him with his free hand, wild and fast. Enzo blocked, turned, and drove him backward into the edge of a stone pillar, hard enough to stun without spectacle. Security converged from 3 directions. Guests recoiled, then surged to film despite staff trying to lower phones. Ava stood where momentum left her, breathing in short, ragged pulls, wrist burning, phone still in her hand with upload confirmations stacking one after another. 6 of 18, 9 of 18, 12 of 18. Enzo did not look away from Nader when he spoke. Ava, behind the service bar. Now. She took one step and nearly folded. The delayed tremor hit her legs all at once. Rosa reached her first, gripping her elbow and steering her toward the side station, where a house medic was already opening a trauma kit. Behind them, Enzo's orders cut through the gallery in a chain so crisp, the room obeyed before processing words. Lock exits. Disarm him. Medic now. Chairs scraped. Security split to doors and perimeter. One guard caught Nader's wrist as he reached inside his jacket. A compact pistol clattered across marble and slid under a donor tablecloth, drawing a scream from someone near the front row. Another guard kicked it clear and bagged it. Ava sat when Rosa pushed her down onto a low stool behind the bar. Her hands would not stop shaking. The medic knelt, checked her pupils, then peeled back gauze on her wrist with brisk gentleness, while an assistant pressed a paper cup of hot tea between her fingers to warm the tremor out. It's bruising, not a fracture, the medic said. Keep your hand elevated. Ava nodded, though she barely heard him. Her ears rang with leftover adrenaline and the muffled roar of a gala collapsing into controlled evacuation. Through the mirrored back wall, she saw Enzo in profile. Suit sleeve damp, jaw set, one hand braced on Nader's shoulder while detectives from an off-duty detail pushed through the crowd. Not panic, not chaos. Command. Her phone vibrated again. Final upload complete. Bianchi appeared beside Enzo, said something quick, and held up his own screen. Even from a distance, Ava recognized the waveform thumbnails of audio files. Nader lunged once more, desperate now, and grabbed the nearest catering worker by the collar, trying to pull him between himself and the security line as a human shield. The room jolted, collective breath catching. Enzo's voice dropped to a low baritone, barely contained and cold enough to still movement. You let him go, or you leave here in cuffs and silence. Do you understand me? For the first time all night, Nader looked uncertain. Enzo used that hesitation with surgical precision. You, he said to the terrified catering worker in Nader's grip. Drop your weight and move left when I count. Security, hold your line. No one rushes. His voice stayed level, but each word landed like a lock turning. The worker nodded, shaking so hard the silver tray in his hand rattled against his cuff buttons. Guests had stopped pretending not to watch. Beyond the gallery doors, staff were ushering donors out in controlled streams, heels and dress shoes striking marble in sharp, anxious rhythms. 1, Enzo said. Nader's forearm tightened across the worker's chest. Back off or I break him. 2. Ava's fingers crushed the paper teacup until heat seeped through to her palm. She could see Enzo's profile in the mirror behind the bar, jaw set, shoulders still. No wasted motion, no panic. 3. The worker dropped suddenly, knees folding. In the same instant, he lurched left, exactly as instructed. Security surged. Nader twisted free of the first grab with a snarl and slammed an elbow into a guard's sternum, then caught another server by the sleeve and yanked him into the gap. The second hostage cried out and stumbled into stacked champagne crates. Glass exploded across the carpet in a bright, ugly scatter. Clear civilians from the east corridor. Enzo snapped. Bianchi, with me. Conte, lock the loading bay now. Ava rose halfway off the stool before the medic pressed her shoulder down. Stay seated. He's heading for service exit C, she said, breath short. He came from there. Bianchi was already moving, 2 fingers to his earpiece. Exit C, seal it. Repeat, seal it. The radio chatter came back layered and urgent. Copy. South stair blocked. West stair blocked. Then another voice strained. Loading bay breach. Suspect has a staff member in front of him. Enzo's head turned toward the service doors. Visual? Negative. Rain glare. He's moving fast. By 7:46 p.m., the gallery had been emptied except for security, staff, detectives from the off-duty detail, and Ava behind the mirrored bar, while the medic wrapped fresh compression around her wrist. Her pulse still hammered against the gauze. On the counter beside her, her phone lit with incoming confirmations from Bianchi's legal intake. Files received, checksum verified, duplicate archive created. The evidence she had carried for weeks had stopped being private fear and become record. A detective with rain on his shoulders knelt beside the bagged pistol under the donor table and photographed it from 4 angles before sealing a second evidence pouch around the first. Another detective collected the wireless microphone Nader had used and requested the audio feed from the venue engineer. Nothing was left to chance. Every object got a number. Every number got a signature. Rosa stood at Ava's right shoulder like a wall. Drink, she ordered, pushing the tea back into Ava's hand when Ava tried to set it down. I need my phone. You need your blood sugar not on the floor. Ava obeyed, swallowed, and tasted tannin and adrenaline. Across the room, Enzo returned through the service doors with rain darkening one sleeve and fury banked behind his eyes. Bianchi followed, speaking quickly. He used a catering porter as cover at the bay, Bianchi said. No major injuries. He shoved through before gate lock. Stole a gray sedan from Valet Lane. Plate captured on camera 6 and 2 street feeds. Alert is out. Enzo's answer was clipped. Send plate, face, and firearm match to the corruption unit and precinct command. I want transit cams pulled from here to the battery in 10-minute intervals, and get statements from every person he touched tonight. Bianchi nodded and peeled away to execute. Enzo crossed to the bar. Can you stand? Ava set the cup down carefully. Yes. He looked at the medic first, not her. Can she travel? Bruising, soft tissue strain, shock response, the medic said. She should not be alone, and she needs observation for a few hours. Done. Enzo turned to Ava. You're not going back to Bensonhurst without a full security package. I have inventory and payroll in that kitchen. And he has your address, Enzo said. His voice remained low, but a restrained anger threaded under it. Do you understand me? She met his gaze, stubbornness rising before sense caught up. I understand. I still have staff to account for. Rosa Marino and your courier are already under escort in a separate vehicle, he said. Your bakery keys stay with you. Your decisions stay with you. Your perimeter does not. The phrasing stopped her argument cold. Not control for spectacle, control for survival. She nodded once. I need to call my brother. You call him from the secure room, Enzo said. Then we move. The secure room was a windowless executive office with soft carpet, a polished conference table, and 2 armed guards outside the door. Ava stood near the credenza because sitting made her feel trapped. She called Sammy on speaker with trembling fingers. He picked up on the second ring. Ava, why are there 3 missed calls from an unknown number? Because security keeps rotating lines, she said, trying for steady and landing somewhere close. Listen carefully. You're not going home tonight. A beat of silence. What happened? An incident at the gala. I'm okay. Rosa is okay. Are you hurt? Bruised wrist, nothing worse. She looked at Enzo, who had stepped back to give her space while still listening. A car is coming for you and Layla. You go with them. You take your insulin kit, and you text me when you're in the apartment. Sami's voice dropped. Is this him? She didn't answer directly. You stay with Layla. Keep her calm. I always keep her calm. The fierce, protective note in his tone made Ava close her eyes for 1 second. I know. I'm proud of you. Don't do that, he said. Don't sound like goodbye. Her throat tightened. It isn't. It's logistics. He exhaled hard. Fine, I'm packing now. When the call ended, Enzo handed her a bottle of water and a protein bar from a tray someone had placed on the table. Eat half now. She took the bar, unwrapped it, and forced down 2 bites before nausea and exhaustion collided. I'm trying. That's enough for this minute. 23 minutes later, the convoy reached Rosaria in sheets of rain. 2 SUVs blocked both ends of the block, while security swept the bakery front and alley. Ava stepped out under an umbrella and stared at her own storefront glowing weakly behind wet glass. Red tile and brass handles looking smaller than she remembered. Home, and suddenly not safe. Inside, she moved quickly through familiar stations with 2 guards shadowing at protocol distance. Cash box secured, fridge logs photographed, dough transfer noted for insurance. Rosa collected payroll envelopes and staff emergency contacts from the office drawer. The practical tasks steadied Ava's breathing until a noise from the back alley cut through the rain. A car door slam, then footsteps splashing hard toward the service entrance. One guard barked, "Down!" Ava dropped behind the steel bench as the back door shuddered under impact. Through the narrow wired glass pane, she saw Nader's face for half a second, distorted by water and rage, one shoulder driving into the frame. He shouted her name, voice raw and furious, then slammed the door again. The deadbolt held. Enzo was already there, pulling Ava farther from the line of sight with one hand while signaling the team with the other. Rear alley, contain right flank. No discharge unless necessary. Nader kicked the lower panel once, twice, then bolted as sirens climbed from the avenue. A guard gave chase to the alley mouth, but stopped at Enzo's command. Hold position. We keep her protected. Patrol units take the perimeter. The attempted grab lasted less than 20 seconds. Ava's knees shook for 10 full minutes after. By 11:58 p.m., police had taken preliminary statements at the bakery, and Enzo overruled every attempt Ava made to stay. Not by force, by options narrowed to one survivable path. She could lock Rosaria herself, choose what records to carry, and ride in the lead SUV with Rosa. Or she could argue while an unsecured alley remained open. She chose the keys, the records, and the SUV. The safe apartment sat on the 12th floor of a converted pre-war building with reinforced entry, blackout curtains, and a kitchen stocked by someone who understood diabetic schedules. Sammy opened the door before security could knock twice. Layla, asleep against his shoulder, with her curls stuck to his cheek. He looked older than 16 in that moment, jaw tight, insulin pouch clipped to his belt like gear. Ava crossed the room and touched Layla's back, counting breaths out of habit. Warm, steady, safe. Relief hit so hard she had to brace a hand on the doorframe. Enzo remained near the entry, giving family space while his team completed sweeps room by room. Perimeter set, Bianchi reported. 2 at the hall, 1 at stairwell, 1 in lobby. Rotation every 4 hours. Any word on the sedan? Enzo asked. Abandoned in Red Hook. Wiped interior. But we pulled partial from exterior handle and traffic sequence from 4 intersections. Valet's statement came in. He admitted Khoury threatened him in the loading lane and ordered him to keep service corridors C unmonitored for 6 minutes. Ava looked up sharply. The trembling hand, the strange silence, the footsteps that had matched hers and stopped when she stopped. Not paranoia. Pattern. Bianchi continued. Venue engineer provided full mic recording. Detective unit has it logged. Your upload files are mirrored to evidence server and outside counsel. Good, Enzo said. No gaps. When Bianchi left, the apartment quieted to low HVAC hum and the distant hiss of rain against old brick. It was 1:37 a.m. by the microwave clock. Layla had been carried to the guest room. Sammy had finally taken his nighttime dose under Ava's watch. And Rosa slept on the living room sofa with a blanket to her chin and one hand still curled like she was holding a whisk. Ava sat at the kitchen table with a folder she had pulled from her bag during the rush. Guardianship forms, school letters, a family court date stamped 3 weeks out. Enzo stood across from her, jacket off, sleeves rolled once, reading the top page only after she slid it toward him. You didn't mention this at the venue, he said, because I don't hand strangers my life story between tartlets. Her voice came out rougher than intended. She rubbed her bandaged wrist. Temporary guardianship for Sammy after my father died. Kinship petition for Layla after my sister. After she was gone. Nader found out and started calling me unstable, saying he could pay a clerk to flag my file and trigger review. Enzo's gaze sharpened on the court stamp. He named foster placement? She nodded. He said if I missed payment, he'd make me watch my family get processed like paperwork. The silence that followed was dense and cold. When Enzo spoke again, his voice was quieter than she had heard all night. My sister filed 3 reports against her husband in 1 year, he said. Each time she was sent back with advice and a brochure because he looked respectable and she looked emotional. His hand flattened on the folder, not touching it like ownership, touching it like oath. By the time I understood the full pattern, she was dead. Ava looked up. He rarely offered extra words. Now each one seemed extracted from somewhere scarred. I built this structure because no one moved fast enough for her, he said. Security, legal, doctors on call. People call it control. They're not wrong. But the purpose is intervention before permission from people who enjoy delay. The kitchen light cast hard lines across his face, and for the first time, Ava saw grief underneath discipline, not as performance, but as architecture. A past loss turned into a system that acted first and explained later. She drew a slow breath. I won't trade one cage for another. You won't, he said immediately. Any injunction filed will be in your name. Any custody motion will be in your name. My people build the lane. You decide whether to walk it. The words settled into her like warmth after rain. Not surrender. Terms. From the hallway came a soft sound. Sammy shifting on the armchair where he had insisted on keeping watch. Ava rose, checked his blanket, then returned to the kitchen. She placed the guardianship folder back on the table, then added the pharmacy receipt, the forged loan copy, and the handwritten log of dates she had kept in margins and flour-smudged notebooks for months. Then we do this correctly, she said. Every document, every recording, every witness. Enzo gave one decisive nod. By first light, my attorneys file emergency injunctions. At 8, we brief detectives. At 9, you sleep for at least 2 hours while guards stay posted. Outside, rain eased to a fine, steady mist. Inside the safe apartment, with paper evidence spread between them and her family breathing in nearby rooms, Ava felt fear still present, but no longer solitary. And that difference changed the shape of the night. The difference changed the shape of the night. But it did not make the night gentle. Ava still felt every nerve in her body, running hot beneath exhausted skin as she gathered the papers into cleaner stacks, aligning corners, because order was the only thing she could control with certainty. The kitchen light buzzed overhead. The refrigerator compressor kicked on, then off. In the living room, Sami shifted in sleep and muttered once, a soft sound that made her glance toward the doorway before she forced her attention back to the table. Enzo stayed where he was, one hand resting near the guardianship file, giving her space without retreating from the conversation. His presence filled the room in the same way his voice did during a crisis. Contained, deliberate, unignorable. Ava hated how much her pulse steadied because he was there. She hated it because she understood exactly how dangerous dependence could become when wrapped in the language of safety. I need a copy set tonight, she said, sliding the forged loan pages toward him. One for detectives, one for court, one outside your network. He nodded once. Already in progress. Don't anticipate me. A pause. Understood. She looked up then, meeting his eyes directly. I mean it. You can build the lane. You don't decide where I walk. Something shifted across his face. Not offense, not surprise. More like recognition landing in real time. That was the agreement. Then keep it. I will. Her throat tightened at the simple certainty in his answer. She'd spent years in rooms where men answered with charm before changing terms in private. Enzo did not soften his words, and that bluntness unsettled her almost as much as it reassured her. Fear and trust kept colliding in her chest, each refusing to give ground. He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and set a phone on the table. Not his primary device, she guessed, but encrypted and clean, the kind used for legal and security channels. This line goes to me, Bianchi, and counsel only. No switchboard, No gatekeeper. Ava stared at it. Why hand me this? So no one filters your access through me, he said. If I'm in a meeting, you still get command response. She touched the edge of the phone with 2 fingers, then withdrew her hand. Command response. Not permission. The distinction mattered. She could feel it mattering in places inside her that had gone rigid long before tonight. She gave a brief nod, then unwrapped the compression bandage from her wrist to check the swelling. Purple shadowing had spread along the bone. The skin was hot, tender, angry. She hissed before she could stop herself. Enzo moved half a step forward, then stopped. May I? She looked from his face to his open hand. To do what? Rewrap it. Better support. Ava held still for 1 beat, 2. Attraction came at her in inconvenient details. The steadiness of his hands, the restraint in his posture, the fact that he asked instead of taking. Fear followed immediately behind it, reminding her that power could ask politely and still consume everything around it. Do it, she said quietly. But listen while you do. I'm listening. He took the fresh wrap from the medic kit and worked with precise pressure, anchoring above her wrist first, then crossing under her palm. No unnecessary contact. No false tenderness. She watched his fingers and heard her own voice come out lower than usual. I won't be managed through my family. No gifts to Sammy's school, no helpful calls to Layla's teachers, no staff assigned to follow them without my knowledge. If there's a security change, I hear it first. Agreed. No men inside this apartment after midnight, unless there's a live threat. He met her gaze as he secured the final strip. We'll hold to that. If your team speaks to me, they use my name. Not sweetheart, not ma'am as a warning, my name. Done. She swallowed. And one more thing. Say it. What you said in the gallery. Her pulse picked up again, memory flashing hot and humiliating across her skin. I heard you. His jaw tightened. The line to him. You don't touch what is mine, she repeated, each word measured. I understand why you said it. I also need you to understand what that language sounds like to someone who has been treated like an asset. For the first time since he entered the apartment, he looked away. Only for a second, but she saw the impact. When he answered, his voice was roughened by something deeper than anger. In that moment, I was talking to a man who speaks ownership and force. I used a language he fears. And me? And you are not an asset, he said. You are not leverage. You are not a debt line. He held her eyes again. If I use words that put you back in that cage, you call it out and I correct. The simplicity of it nearly undid her. No defensiveness, no argument about intent, just accountability stated like protocol. Ava looked down at her rewrapped wrist and flexed her fingers. The support was firm, not tight. Thank you, she said, then added, because she needed truth to stay plain between them. I'm still scared. Of him? Yes. And of this. She gestured lightly between them, then toward the door, where armed men stood guard in a hallway that smelled like old plaster and gun oil. Fast protection. Powerful promises. I don't know where the edges are yet. You set edges. I enforce them. He stepped back, restoring distance she had not realized she wanted until he gave it. We can work inside that. At 2:12 a.m., the rain thinned from hard percussion to a soft hiss against the building, and Bianchi called on the secure line with updates in clipped, efficient bursts. The stolen sedan had been processed. Venue footage had been duplicated to 2 independent servers. The trembling valet had signed a full statement with counsel present, admitting coercion and identifying the exact 6-minute blind window Nader demanded. Ava listened on speaker, leaning over the table with her palms braced as if she were back at Rosaria watching Battersat. "Any media leak?" Enzo asked. "2 short clips on private feeds," Bianchi said. "No full narrative yet. We're preserving the complete context before release." Ava cut in before she could second-guess herself. "Make sure the clip includes his hand on my wrist before the microphone stunt." Bianchi did not hesitate. "Yes, Miss Hassan." "Also include the MC's timestamp. He took the mic at 7:34. Logged." When the call ended, Enzo looked at her with that same assessing focus he had given the dessert line in Prep Room C, as if recalibrating her role in his internal map. "You just rewrote the morning narrative. I'm done being narrated by him." A faint, grim approval passed through his expression. "Good." The secure phone vibrated again before either of them moved. Unknown number. No caller ID. Ava felt cold move through her ribs with immediate, instinctive certainty. She did not need to hear the voice to know who had found a way through. Enzo read her face, then looked at the screen. "Your call?" She inhaled once, slow, then hit accept and set the phone on speaker between them. Nader's voice arrived silk smooth and frayed at the edges, each syllable carefully controlled. "There you are. I was beginning to think you'd hidden behind attorneys already." Ava felt her bandaged hand tremble and flattened it against the table to still it. "This line is recorded." A short laugh. "Perfect. Then record this. You stole from me, you staged a scene, and you sent edited files to men who enjoy theater. Withdraw your statement before dawn, and I might still be reasonable." Reasonable. The word almost made her smile from the sheer familiarity of his script. She looked at the folder in front of her, at the years compressed into stamped forms and flower-marked notes, and found her voice settling into place. "There is no debt," she said. "There is fraud, extortion, assault, custodial interference threats. I filed. You filed through him. I filed through me." Silence on the line. Then the mask slipped. You forget how quickly files disappear when the right clerk gets paid. Enzo's gaze sharpened, but he said nothing. He let her drive. Ava leaned closer to the phone. "The clerk you paid is already named in a sworn interview, and the transfer records are preserved. You don't get to erase this one." Nader's tone hardened, the polished donor voice falling away. "You think he keeps you safe forever? Men like Pellegrini protect what benefits them. When this turns expensive, he'll cut you loose." The words landed exactly where old wounds lived. Ava felt the hit, felt the old reflex to placate and bargain and survive by shrinking. She looked up at Enzo instead and found him motionless, waiting, refusing to seize the exchange from her. That restraint gave her more strength than any interruption could have. "You taught me to confuse fear with loyalty," she said into the phone. "I don't anymore. Careful. No, you be careful." Her voice stayed low, clear, unbroken. "Do not call me. Do not contact my family. Do not come near Rosaria, this building, or any court where my name appears. You had your last private warning in that gallery." A small crackle, as if he had shifted grip on another handset. When he spoke again, there was no charm left. "You belong to a contract." Enzo stepped in then, not taking over, but drawing a hard perimeter with 4 words. "She belongs to herself." The line went still. Enzo continued, voice barely above a murmur and colder than the rain outside. "This is your notice, Khoury. Counsel has your file. Detectives have your recordings. You approach her again, Every unit you fear gets activated at once. Do you understand me? Nader exhaled, sharp and contemptuous. You can't guard every door. Ava answered before Enzo could. I don't need every door. I need one judge and authenticated audio. I have both. For a moment, she thought he might keep pressing, drag the call into threats and bait, but instead there was a clipped click and dead air. He had hung up. Bianchi called back within 90 seconds, already tracking metadata from the secure line. Spoofed route through 3 relays, he said. No live fix, but we captured voice print quality high enough for enhancement. Detectives notified. New charge packet drafted for witness intimidation. Outcome? Ava asked, forcing herself into procedural language. Outcome is added exposure for him before arraignment, Bianchi said. No direct location yet. Noted. She ended the call and stared at the dark phone screen until her breathing normalized. The room felt both too small and finally real, as if an old ghost had knocked and found steel instead of soft wood. Enzo spoke first. You drew the line cleanly. So did you, she said. He gave a slight shake of his head. You drew yours before I spoke. That mattered more than she expected. Ava gathered the papers again, this time creating 2 deliberate piles. Evidence for criminal court, evidence for family court. She wrote a short incident addendum in neat block letters while details were fresh, then signed and dated it. Enzo signed as witness only after she slid it across. When she finished, she looked toward the hallway where Sami slept in the armchair, and Layla breathed softly behind a closed door. Tomorrow he'll try another angle. He will, Enzo said. Then tomorrow we answer through law first, force second. A measured nod. Agreed. She rose, carried the signed packet to the lockbox by the pantry, and placed it inside with the phone logs and pharmacy receipt. Physical proof. Stored, labeled, ready. When she turned back, Enzo was still watching her. Not like prey, not like property, but like someone taking an oath seriously because he knew the cost of breaking it. Ava held his gaze and set the final boundary in words both of them could not misread. You stand with me, not over me. His reply came immediate and absolute. With you. With you. The words settled between them, and then the practical world knocked on the apartment door at 2:31 a.m. Bianchi entered with a woman in a charcoal suit, carrying 2 hard cases and a portable scanner. Counsel, he said. Daniela Rizzitelli, emergency filings. We need chain of custody now, if we want first calendar. Ava unlocked the pantry box with fingers that still trembled and placed each item on the kitchen table under Daniela's direction. The signed incident addendum, the forged loan packet, guardianship papers, printed phone logs, the pharmacy receipt, and the handwritten date ledger she had kept in flour-smudged margins. Bianchi added evidence copies from the gala. Photographs of the bagged firearm, the authenticated venue audio timeline, the valet's sworn statement, and the service corridor camera stills showing Nader entering through the 6-minute blind window he had forced. Daniela read each label aloud as her paralegal scanned and sealed duplicates in tamper envelopes. Nothing was treated as small. Nothing was left loose. At 3:08 a.m., while Omar was sealing the last envelope, Bianchi's radio cracked with the update everyone had been waiting for. Suspect located near Atlantic Avenue Clinic, in custody without incident. Ava gripped the back of a dining chair until her knuckles went pale. She had expected relief to feel warm. It came cold and sharp, like stepping from rain into a room that was safe but unfamiliar. Bianchi continued listening, then faced her. He was carrying a second phone and cash. No access to counsel yet. Detective unit confirms hold on extortion, assault, fraud, witness intimidation, and custodial interference threats. Arraignment at first session. Enzo watched Ava, not Bianchi, as if measuring whether her knees would hold. They did. Barely. By 5:42 a.m., the rain had stopped and left the sidewalk slick and metallic under street lamps. The convoy moved before sunrise, 2 vehicles ahead, 2 behind. Ava sat in the rear seat beside Daniela, with a sealed evidence case between them like a third passenger. Enzo rode in front and spoke in low, clipped phrases into the secure line. Forensic authentication first, family court clerk second. Press statement after filing, not before. Sammy had refused to sleep and now sat with Rosa and Layla in the safe apartment, under guard and strict instructions. Ava had wanted him beside her at court, then looked at his 17-year-old face and chose differently. Protection had to mean more than proximity. Family court opened at 8, fluorescent and crowded, with tired parents, overfilled folders, and security lines that moved in short, impatient bursts. Wealth disappeared in that hallway. Everyone waited under the same flickering panels. Daniela filed emergency injunctions in Ava's name, exactly as promised. No corporate plaintiff. No surrogate guardian. Ava Hassan, petitioner. A forensic analyst from the corruption unit met them at counsel table with a slim report confirming the recording's metadata continuity and no edit breaks. "These are clean captures," he said quietly. "Date-stamped, source-consistent, device-linked. Defense can challenge motive, not authenticity." Ava nodded, throat tight, and signed 2 more affidavits where indicated. At 9:17 a.m., Judge Levin called the petition. Ava stood, swore in, and answered questions with the same controlled cadence she used when reading recipes under pressure. Dates, locations, threat language, the forged loan signature that did not match her hand. The clerk Nader had named. The threat to trigger foster placement as leverage. She did not dramatize. She did not shrink. Across the aisle, Nader appeared on a custodial video feed from criminal holding in a wrinkled dress shirt, his charm reduced to irritation and a hard stare into the camera. When his attorney suggested she had misunderstood private financial negotiations, Daniela introduced the transcript where he said, in his own voice, that files disappeared when the right clerk got paid. The judge's expression flattened. During a short recess, Ava's phone lit with Mr. Nicasio's name. 3 missed calls had become 1 direct message. Saw the morning reports. Rent received. Lease action withdrawn. She stared at the text until Daniela touched her elbow. "You want to answer?" Ava typed back with deliberate brevity. "Transfer confirmed. Keep all communication in writing." Then she archived the thread and handed the phone to Omar for case file export. Another loose end tied to paper. The rulings came in sequence, clear and public. Emergency protective order granted. Temporary guardianship converted to secured status pending full review, with expedited date set and no adverse placement action permitted. Any contact by Nader with Ava, Sammy, or Layla barred immediately. The court also issued a referral order to internal investigators on the named clerk and directed preservation of all family file access logs. Judge Levin looked over her glasses at the video monitor before adjourning. "Mr. Khoury, this court does not function as your debt instrument." The feed went dark. Criminal arraignment followed in the adjacent building just after 11. Ava sat behind the rail with Bianchi and 1 detective while prosecutors laid out the package: firearm possession at a charity venue, assault witnessed on multiple videos, extortion recordings, fraud documentation, witness intimidation call, and flight behavior. The trembling valet testified under subpoena that Nader had threatened him to keep Corridor C unwatched. The maitre d', stiff and pale, confirmed the unauthorized mic seizure and Ava's visible attempt to disengage. Even the junior pastry assistant who had whispered about her coat appeared to identify timeline movements near Prep Room C. His earlier contempt had meant nothing to her safety then, and less now. But his timestamp still helped the record. By 12:26 p.m., the judge denied bail, citing coercion risk and active interference patterns. Nader turned once toward the gallery, jaw twitching, then was escorted out in cuffs without another word. When Ava stepped onto the courthouse plaza, cameras were already waiting behind barricades. Flashbulbs bounced off wet stone. She hated microphones, hated becoming public material, but hiding had never protected her. Daniela asked, "Statement or no statement?" Ava took one breath and stepped forward. "I am not under contract to violence," she said, voice steady enough to carry. The debt was forged. The threats were documented. The court listened. She thanked the detectives by name, thanked the court officers, and ended there. No spectacle, no plea for sympathy. Just record. Enzo remained half a step behind her through the press corridor, close enough to block intrusion, far enough to honor what she had asked in that kitchen at 2 a.m. A reporter shouted whether Pellegrini Foundation now owned Rosaria Bakery. Ava answered before anyone else could. No transfer, no takeover. We accepted temporary security support and legal aid. Rosaria stays ours. Enzo inclined his head once, confirming without reclaiming the sentence. By late afternoon, they were back in Bensonhurst under a sky finally clearing to pale blue over damp brick. Rosaria smelled like sanitizer, coffee, and the sweet mineral heat of a repaired oven cycling for the first full test since the failure code. Marco from Bellini arrived with borrowed sheet pans and a gruff, embarrassed hug for Rosa. Sami taped a new emergency contact card beside the register, while Layla sat at the back table drawing a bakery with windows too big and a son wearing sunglasses. No one said the word normal. They worked anyway. Bianchi supervised installation of 2 discrete cameras over the service entrance and alley, then handed Ava a printed protocol sheet. No armed rotation inside after midnight unless active threat, he said. Per your instruction, hall coverage remains. She checked the page. Her name was on the authorization line. She signed. At 6:03 p.m., a Pellegrini Foundation accountant arrived in person with formal letters. Gala contract paid in full despite disruption, damage penalties waived, emergency grant approved for equipment repair with no equity claim, no management seat, no branding requirement. Ava read every line twice, then had Daniela review by phone on speaker before she accepted. Funds clear by morning, the accountant said. Your ownership remains unchanged. Ava placed the signed acceptance in a labeled folder and locked it in the office cabinet beside payroll and tax records. Paper mattered. She had learned that at cost. Night settled slowly over Bay Parkway. The first post-crisis batch of sesame loaves came out just after 9. Crusts deep gold, steam curling into the cooled kitchen air. Rosa cried without admitting it and blamed onion fumes from a sandwich she was not making. Sami laughed for the first time in 2 days, brief and startled, like he had forgotten the sound. Ava finally sat on an upturned flour bucket by the back door, wrist aching, body lead-heavy, and watched Enzo standing near the alley camera monitor in shirt sleeves, speaking quietly with Bianchi before dismissing the team for reduced overnight posture. At 4:11 a.m., the foundation transfer and gala settlement posted. Ava stood at the office terminal with Rosa beside her and cleared the remaining red lines in her ledger. Utility arrears paid with confirmation receipts printed and clipped to the month file. Supplier balance wired with same-hour acknowledgement lifting Rosaria's delivery hold for the morning route. She sent both confirmations to council and struck through the heading she had carried for weeks. Immediate financial crisis. Rent, insulin, utilities, and supplier debt resolved. Near dawn, when the block was still and wet, pavement reflected the bakery sign in broken red streaks. Ava stepped outside with 2 paper cups of coffee. Enzo took one, heat fogging briefly between them. Neither spoke for several seconds. A delivery truck rumbled 3 blocks away. Somewhere above them, a window opened, then shut. "The order is in place," he said at last. "Bail denied. Debt void process filed. Guardianship secured on interim status with fast track to final. Your evidence copies are with prosecutors, court, and independent archive. The items from tonight are all logged and submitted." Ava nodded. And the strange parts all had names in the end. The silent corridor, the shaking valet, the footsteps. They did. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. "I won't promise easy. I won't ask for easy." She let that settle, then gave him the only answer she trusted because it was chosen, not forced. "Stay in the lane we built." His gaze held hers, steady and unadorned. "No one makes you invisible again. Not while I'm breathing, and not on terms that cost you yourself." The sky over Bensonhurst lightened from slate to pearl. Behind them, Rosaria's ovens warmed for the morning rush, and the door opened to the people she had kept safe, the life she had kept hers.